just before we start the show, I want to take an opportunity to invite you to join me for the Podfluence Weekly newsletter, which is available both on LinkedIn and through the official newsletter channel. Now, if you are on LinkedIn and it's easier for you to follow there, then please just click on the link in the show notes, which will take you straight to Podfluence on LinkedIn, where you can subscribe for free and get weekly updates on Podfluence articles as well as episodes. If you would like to subscribe to the full newsletter where you'll get additional materials and, as my little incentive to you, my pre-podcast guest checklist for you to use when you're appearing on podcast shows so that you can be fully prepared every single time, then please click the link to the official newsletter in the show notes. Hope to see you there. Let's get on with the show. My name is John Ball, and I'm very happy to introduce to you my guest today, Fredrik Sandvall. He is a serial entrepreneur. He's worked in finance for many years, has lots of experience in lots of different sectors. We'll get to hear some more about that. He is also an author of several books, and I'm really looking forward to some particular insights he has on influence and persuasion in today's call. Let me welcome Fredrik.
Thank you. Thanks, John. I really look forward to share ideas about that as well, because I think it is important, something that we all do every single day, whether we agree about that to ourselves or not.
Great. Tell me a little bit about your background and what sort of experiences you've been through that have made you something of an expert on, particularly on things like influence and persuasion.
Yeah, so I like to highlight a few things. Number one, the accent is from having worked in more than 40 countries, traveling more than 80. So I am born in Sweden. So that is the accent out of the way. I now live in London, and I started growing up in the countryside, and one of the first things I learned as young is to be the oldest brother. So with that came lots of more extra responsibilities, leadership traits, and also in the space of what we talk about in this podcast as well. The Scouts, early days, same thing there, like a lot of influence, leadership, presentation was important throughout my early days, and also daring to get on stage through dance of everything. Competing in dance, daring to be on stage in front of many people at a very young age has helped me and still helps today. Then I moved on to join the military. So I did many years, more than 10 years with special forces, and the last number of years in intelligence and operations in many countries all over the world. While I did that, I also worked with running not one but two businesses. And now in the last few years, I have moved permanently to London, still work all over the world. And now my focus is in deal making, in real estate, deal making around entrepreneurship, raising finance. And all of those things together with a couple of business degrees has helped me to pick up different aspects, from negotiating, for example, with United Nations, to handling human intelligence gathering, to try to deal with your siblings, managing large teams, small teams. I think the largest direct unit I had was more than 250 people to manage, often managing a lot more than that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's quite an interesting background, and I'm sure there's more that you could go into it as well. But one of the things that really excited me, I think I said when we first spoke, was that your background in intelligence and diplomacy, that I think is, for a podcast like mine that's really very focused on things like being able to present yourself and influence and persuasion, that is an area where I'm sure I'm fascinated about it, and I think listeners will be as well. Can you tell us, maybe first of all, how you ended up there, and maybe some of the lessons or experiences you've had through that?
Yeah, you jump straight in. Happy to do that. So number one, how to get into intelligence. Some people who listen to this podcast might be curious how to do that. The first thing working with that is you can't tell people that you do that. That's number one. So you can't tell the world that, I'm going to be this and that. Well, keep that thought to yourself. Different countries have got different selection methods how to do this. Obviously, with the high quantity of people who would like to do it, they are screening for different things. So how did I get into this? Starting with a very broad, at the time when I grew up, roughly 100,000 people, men, is how many who were 18 at the year when I did the test. So they tested everything from your physique to your mental health, to your psyche, to your strength, to your background and suitability, basically. And that helped me through extra tests and selection periods like you see on movies with like the Navy SEALs, Hell Week, etc. All of that allowed me to pass the minimum barrier to get into special forces. And I did many years as an officer. And then from there, the transition was quite easy because that is the perfect pedigree for especially military intelligence to find the operators and intelligence officers from that space. So assuming that you are one of the best and assuming that you are loyal, trustworthy, and can serve your cause or the country, because they will, of course. So for example, I would find it very difficult to try to enter the intelligence service in the United Kingdom because I'm not born here. My parents are not from here. So talk about intelligence. The best way to do it, unless you're a traitor and deceive your own country, is to focus on your own country.
Right. Well, that would make sense. Right?
That's a good start. It's a good starting point. So yeah, number one, it's quite hard to get in, and once you're in there, you get fantastic training. So picking one example, many of the listeners might or might not have seen any of the Born series from many years ago. One thing which is quite cool, talking about influencing, is amount of information you can take in. What do I mean by that? I mean, literally, we get so many impressions bombarding us every second of every day, and we can open our mind to see, take in, recall, and remember a lot more by actually just opening our senses up and paying more attention. So if you and me would be on a bus or the tube or anywhere, we can just decide to think about ourselves and very much cordon off and don't see, hear, or observe things around us. Or we can do the other way around. So we can actually pay attention to details. We can screen the terrain for whatever we find interesting or hostile or whatever. So just the amount of information you can take in, and bringing this back to influencing. So to read your audience, or at the negotiation table, to read the people around the table, the body signals, taking the whole message, not only what people say, because that's just a fraction of what is actually the message. So the whole compassion, how trustworthy they are, whether they are lying or not, whether, all of those things come together. So number one there is just take in a lot of information. I'm thinking already far away from the original question, so I'll just
it's on. Okay. This is interesting because I'm thinking that most people, when they're going in front of the board or if they're doing a presentation, they're in their heads. They're not looking at what's going on around them or looking for details and paying attention. So this is good stuff.
So back on that track again. So how you then present your message. Talk about the super basics. One way is to tell people the way you like to be told. Even better gold standard is, of course, to try to tell it to them the way they like to receive the message, basically. And that comes down to, yet again, your understanding of the person or the audience across. So that means that you will most likely, if it's one person, you need to indirectly profile them so that you can customize the message. If it will be like, if you will share your message with passion, it will be full of rich of details, if you need to cut to the chase. Those are just a few high level thoughts on how to customize your message to get across to the person and increase the likelihood of them actually taking it on board, which is also sometimes linked to likability or not. It depends on the context, but likability can also open up people's minds to be more likely to take in your message. And assuming that you've done all of those things, then you are now in a place where you actually hopefully have said the right things.
So that would be some like rapport building things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very focused rapport building, because you're also looking for maybe specific directions or triggers as to what best way to create rapport with specific people based on the situation. Indeed. Great. Yeah. So from that then, where would you go from there? Like you've got some rapport, you're ready to present. What next?
Yeah. I like to read one already there. So assuming that you are about to present, negotiate, or just talk to other people, before you even come to that space, you would like to prepare. And that's something I see people failing all the time, including myself sometimes. It's so easy. If you're good at what you do in terms of this space, and you're so good and so confident, you just go in there, you wing it, and you nail it. Imagine how good you could be if you actually paid some attention and prepared as well, in addition to that. So that comes back to, again, customizing the message, making sure that you have some hooks potentially that they can grab onto when you're talking, so they can actually recall what you actually have said, how you formulate, how you frame the whole conversation, including even which setting you have, if you can influence that as well. So many people I know have picked a very ambient yet useless venue for a particular conversation, for example. So we might have talk about, for example, the sales space. I've been coaching many thousands of people in the sales space, and one MD who was asking for advice about like where should I meet them. He was about to meet the highest person in one of the biggest phone companies in the world, and he had got FaceTime with him, and he thought like, I have to do something really good to impress this person. So he thought about basically the fanciest place that he can come up with that would be appropriate. But when I was coaching him around that, I made very clear that, yeah, very nice venue, but not for the purpose. He will not be able to hear what you have got to share. So we might have a good experience, but he will have no idea about who you are, what you want to do with him. So it means that you've given him a good experience. Thank you very much. But he will have no idea what you're about. So that's another way of preparation before the actual meet.
Yeah. Okay, great. I mean, preparation is always a good idea, and it's going to make a difference to your results. I mean, one of the things that I like to do to prepare is to think about the outcomes that I'd most like to create. And then at the very least set an intention for that outcome, so that I think I'm more likely that I'm directing myself, kind of programming myself to work towards that. Doesn't always guarantee it, but it does help me improve my results. So that's probably one of the things that I do to prepare, especially for meetings of those sorts of kinds.
Yeah.
One thing that I'm interested in particularly, and may or may not be able to properly answer this, but are the skills that you learn in terms of creating rapport or influence in those areas, are they all learnable outside of the intelligence community and Secret Service, or are there stuff that?
No, I would say that they're very much learnable and teachable. Certain things, not trying to be sounding elitist, so some things are harder to learn, so it might not be appropriate to fit with some people's normal life or traits or behaviors. But most of it is very much teachable. So for example, one time I came home to my wife and told her I've been away for 2 weeks. Hello, dear. I've been on a 2 weeks training how to lie. By the way, I'm going away for the weekend. I probably shouldn't combine those two statements in very much the same phrase.
Well, yeah. I mean, the whole thing of saying you've just been on a course to learn how to lie, is that true?
Yeah, exactly. And what does it mean? To give it a context, one way how to, for example, when you're talking to people and they are actually trying to deceive you, there are quite a few ways how you can spot that. And also one way, obviously, how to learn to spot that is to flip the table. So if you learn how to do it, that means you're easier, more likely to actually spot it. So that's obviously the major reason I was having that training, not to actually lie, but actually to see when you're negotiating which people are doing what. And
are there a few pointers you could share with us about how to spot?
I would say all these things with for example, where their eyes are going, stuff like that. People can read about that quite openly. If people are searching their memory, or if they go into the creative mind and might actually come up with a fabrication to an answer that should be a straightforward from the back of the mind, they actually have to come up with a creative, not so truthful version of what they are about to reply about. So that's of course one thing. But since that is commonly known about people who are at least decent, good at doing this. That means you can therefore train to look the other way. You can use the eyes to not use the eyes, doing exactly what I talk about if you just pay attention to it. So the eyes for amateurs is a great giveaway to catch them. But if people are professional liars, then you will have no clue to find them. Another way how people try to hide the truth is to put it into a chunk where the biggest part is truth, but some of the details are either left out or you tweak them to the way that you want to. But again, this is of course around how people communicate, and whether we know it or not, we do lie pretty much every day, all of us in the world as well. It might be omitting something, or it might be hiding something, or it might be conscious, might be unconscious. So yeah, lying is unfortunately part of human communication as well.
It is, and from some of the books that I've read, it seems that society might actually fall apart if we all start telling the truth all the time.
Yeah, I mean, there are great examples in movies and so on. For example, if I just like to link to the yes man. So if we just say yes to everything, then we will have a very certain outcome. If we say the truth to everything, I think that will also derail many people's lives.
Yeah, so honesty isn't always the best policy, I guess, but integrity is, and that's a bit. To me, that's I know they get clubbed in together, but they're not always the same thing. Yeah. And where would that come in for you? Did you ever feel that you had to compromise yourself at all in those professions to get a result? Or?
No, I was very good with convincing myself. Again, the different way how you can justify things to yourself. For example, one common way is like the greater good. And the greater good could be anything. It could be a just and good cause, but that can also be perverted into, you can convince your own brain anything, which I try to teach my kids all the time, that you can basically take the same situation, you can think it's good or bad, regardless is truth. So linking that back to why and how you do it. So the greater cause is the greater goods. It might be you do something for the team's sake, for the family's sake, for your own sake, for the country. So all of those things come together in a nice way, how we convince ourselves that whatever we are doing is right.
Yeah.
So if we're about to have like a sales presentation, unfortunately for many people in sales, including myself, many cases, you're selling because it's your livelihood, and you need to sell to feed your family. And I think that's not the ideal situation, but it's just the way how sales have been working forever. I mean, going way back before we even had money. Like if you can't sell and trade your goods, then you might starve for the day.
Yeah, as a species, we're very good at justifying our behaviors. Wherever decisions or actions we make, we can follow that up with, and our brain kind of has to make sense of it and justify it. And I don't think we have any option other than to do that, other than to live in a state of cognitive dissonance all the while.
Yeah.
Could you tell us maybe about any stories about where maybe you've had some challenges in that arena, or in terms of influence and persuasion, that you've been able to achieve a big result?
I would say the biggest challenge that most have is because the globe is very global, so people move around. Like we are both today in a different country than where we were born. The culture aspect is a huge thing in terms of that. Would you mind to just repeat the question one more time so I stay on?
Just to get from you whether there was a challenge or a situation you had in that work that you had to.
So the whole challenge of cultural understanding comes back to where we started, is like understand the person across the table, because the cultural understanding is so important. It's so easy to miss clues, that one sign with your body in one part of the country might mean the opposite in another part. So your body language will either help you or hinder you, and also the understanding. For example, a challenge I both had and didn't have is I need to turn that one off. So understanding, for example, working as a Swede in China, India, Middle East, understanding how it is different. So in Sweden, we are quite quick, like the Germans, to cut to the chase, to go straight in, maybe not sugarcoat messages as much, and getting it right in the wrong culture, so to speak, where you don't have those clues, can be a fatal disaster as the problem. So what one how should I frame it? So from my point of view, a failure. So I like to get to business quite quick. And one time I was working in Middle East, not named country. I wanted to sell in a quite large project, and I literally spent many days just socializing, doing stuff, talking about family, all the things which is not in my normal comfort zone or what I normally would do. Of course, it's quite easy to do it, but I felt frustrated that we couldn't get down to business. But as a result of me adjusting to them, not so I failed from my point of view to do the right thing with a week, led to that when the week was over, pretty much just got a handshake out of the blue, like, okay, you got the business. And then basically my follow-up question, like, so what's the project? And he's just like, well, you're smart, you'll figure it out. So basically I had now, because I've earned the right, I could pretty much design the right and best solution for them with no limits, which is extremely unheard of in consulting usually, that you can pick the best solution for them, and not from the money point of view, but actually you can customize it, which is great when you work with, for example, changing people's behaviors, influencing. Most consulting assignments and speech presentations is just you're there too short time to change a habit, for example. So failure from my side, it took too long time, but on the back of it, it turned out to be very good. And I see a lot of people I'm helping to get it wrong with the culture understanding and the culture patience. So I hope that was useful.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things I know, I imagine, and probably other people do, just because we don't really know other than what we see in films and TV, but in the intelligence community, I imagine, and I'm sure others do, that there are a number of covert tactics and methodologies for gaining influence and persuasion. And so you mentioned some already, like scanning your environment and going into detail. Are there any others that might be useful for people to think about and perhaps go away and learn for themselves or train themselves on?
Yeah, I would say, I know that you have on your podcast previously mentioned Cialdini and his persuasion tactics. They are as applicable in all walks of life, including, of course, this context of working with people. Because again, we are people, we respond in a similar way. And because we often respond in a similar way, that means you can actually game it. So, for example, there are people playing the game of love, or at least of one night stands, by finding that way how to understand the opposite sex. So I'm talking about, for example, the people who work with like pickup artists. They very much just do it for their own reasons, and because the brain is smart and stupid, if you can understand how the cognitive ways work, then you can work that backwards without going into details what that is specifically. If we think about a situation, you often react in a similar way every single time. So that means that is one way how we can go from being a novice to later become an expert. So you know that people in this space will usually do like this, and we got this big database of common ways how to do it, if that's a sales space, the presentation space. So bringing that to the presentation space, for example, is to just know what you will say first, so you know that you don't get too nervous around that. Coming back to traits of the intelligence community, I would say it's very often a game of feelings, and we might not come back to. We have started to talk about lies. Then how can this guy write about trust? Actually, trust is a very essential thing, and it's a feeling, and the gut feeling that we get is from the whole picture that we take in. So For example, you can imagine that the aspect of love can be used, like the whole likability. That can be both used and misused. You can also see how I have never like paid for information like with hard currency, and I know many other countries would actually do that. They would pay for information. I never done that. I have just got information through building rapport, trust, likability, and talking about the greater good, why that would help them or their family or anything else, to actually gain access to information that they normally would not reveal. So if you imagine someone else coming and giving you like a wand of cash for speaking, would you say anything to get that chunk of money?
Depends, really, doesn't
Well,
it?
probably it's a very quite high likelihood you actually get the money, and then in return you might get a lie, something gray, but unlikely the genuine core content and the actual feelings, because it's very hard to buy that with money, in my experience and from what I've seen. So like the same with the employment, if you pay someone to stay but you haven't earned their heart and trust, they will just stay until they find a bigger chunk of money somewhere else.
Yeah, money doesn't generate loyalty for most people in itself. Well, one of the things that I think got me most interested in influence and persuasion, even well before I'd read Cialdini's book and other similar books, was I read a book that was really about marketing. And one of the things it started talking about, this is from a guy called Mark Joyner, if you've ever heard of him. He's an interesting guy, has all the Simpleology website. I think it's worth checking out. He has some good stuff, but he's heavy on the sales for sure. And so one of his books was really about marketing and the hidden stuff with that, and almost dark ops, I suppose, really. And that's where the veil was first lifted for me. Like there's this whole world of influence and persuasion that most people are completely clueless about, but are being influenced by and persuaded by every single day, media, advertising, whatever else, and other people in their lives. And for me, that getting to have an understanding about that is part of the journey of empowerment, is the thing of just to give people an awareness and a real choice, because they don't know they're being influenced. At least when you know you're being influenced, you can make a real choice as to whether you wish to be or not. And so I see diving into this particular area, and it's one that I'll probably spend a lot of time on various podcasts talking about. It has a lot of value for people because it can actually hopefully lift the veil and open people's eyes, because sometimes it's just taking a step back from what's actually going on and thinking, what is actually happening here? What is this person's intention? What's really going on? Rather than where most people are, is in their heads or thinking about what they want to say next. I
was brainstorming ahead of this meeting and then came up with like a long list of bullets of like useful thoughts. Each and every one of them is worth a whole episode. I'll dump a few on you if that's okay.
More than okay, please do.
Let's I'll do them one by one if you're okay with that, and we can discuss it briefly. So if I say you will actually sell more if you don't sell, what do you think I mean by that?
So if you're not focused on the sale,
well, you will sell more if you're not selling. So stop selling.
So stop being in that sort of make the mindset, just focus on the relationship. That was what it means.
In essence, I mean, we all like to buy, but we hate to be sold to.
Yeah.
So if you're on the sales space listening to this, I mean, the less salesy you are, I was learned by my former company where I was working to create a buying atmosphere. So that's staying away from the sales. So I stay away from the salesy language. And then having the right frame of mind. So think about the perfect shopping experience where you feel in control. The buyer like to feel in control. Since this is about influencing, that means that you can actually influence them to feel in that space by your behavior. So that was one thing from my list. I'll throw in one more, then I'd like to get you back to your list of questions you might have prepared. I've got a long list here. So another thought is to pat people's back. What do I mean by that? So people like to feel special. They like to feel like this is an exclusive thing for them only. They are selected and chosen for a reason, which is of course stroking their ego. That's a great way to build super strong rapport very quick, and then you're more likely to then get your message across.
It's a technique that cults use to recruit as well. One of their many techniques.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yes. Yeah.
So it's very effective.
Yeah.
And
I felt part of a few cults. I felt as part of a cults a few times in my career.
All right. Okay. That's kind of interesting.
I felt when you're analyzing it in hindsight.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay. Yeah. I've had times where I've had to check in whether I was getting involved in a cult or not, for sure. And I think there are even now some businesses that kind of operate like cults as well. So it's not just religious cults too. And so there's sort of cult-like behaviors. You even see that in the political world now as well, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, we can all use the knowledge and skills from this podcast in a good way and or a bad way, or a mix of the both. So I'm talking to the people who do good things with this information.
I hope so as well. Yeah, if you're not looking to use influence and persuasion for good, please stop listening.
Exactly. Psychopaths or people who got too big egos probably shouldn't carry on.
This is one of the things that's maybe sometimes I get questions about from some of my clients about whether it's even ethical to be teaching these things in the first place. Ultimately, I talk about this stuff and teach it because I think people need to be armed against it, not because they need to know how to use it. But there are, of course, ethical ways of using influence and persuasion skills that are for the general good or the greater good. And so the greater good isn't putting money in your pocket. The greater good is, to me, empowering people and being of service. So I would hope that people who are listening in and learning these sorts of things are intending to use their what they learn ethically and for good. But of course, there's no guarantee.
Can I share a funny yet strange example from the other week?
Sure.
I was working with my older son, Ivan, and he had his equivalent of the GCSE. So basically the annual curriculum test of everything he's learned so far in maths. And he was not focused at all. He was playing around with some stupid YouTube video, which was very, very, very offensive. But I used my knowledge to reprogram him to use that stupid video, which he had on his mind and disturbed him all the time. I used that to get him to learn the things he found hardest in his whole book. So by him playing that stupid song in his mind, he was just reminding himself about the formulas and how it all worked and hang together. I found that super interesting. So I just basically used his negative flow to anchor something positive and content into it. So very interesting. So I'm not trained in I know so many people who've done NLP training, neuro language programming. I've not had any training linked to that, but when I read about it and read those kind of books, I can see that so many things I've even been taught or actually I'm applying, it's very much linked to that. So the one key term I use is the whole anchoring thing is I've been a bit cheeky sometimes, and when I wanted to remind people about something which is important in their life. So for example, telling you about when you see this, think about that in the right logical way. So for example, every single time you're behind a truck or a lorry and you're about to overtake, you will come up with this other extra thought on the side, which is and that should of course be to do a safe to do a safe way to how to drive around the other truck. You can trigger things, and this is also used in hypnosis.
Yeah.
And I have seen that also used for good reasons and occasionally also for bad reasons. I've never been hypnotized myself, but I'm aware of. Have you?
Yes, and I have trained in hypnotherapy and NLP in the past as well. So mostly during that training is when I've experienced actual hypnosis and the likes. And I find it a fascinating area. I really do, and I use a lot of it now. Sometimes maybe unconsciously as well. But there are certainly, like some of my coaching calls that I do in group coaching. I do a visualization, which is a hypnotic style visualization, which uses a lot of NLP stuff in it, although it is an eyes closed process. But yeah, I really do use it all the time. But for me, it's using it when I use it consciously. I'm using it to work with clients and to help them in some way. I think everyone is hypnotized. Everyone's hypnotizable, and I think everyone is hypnotized at some point to some degree. Just we don't always realize where we are hypnotized. Like there was a very famous hypnotherapist, one of the father of modern hypnotherapy, really, Milton Erickson, who he basically believed that everyone was in a trance of disempowerment, and his job was to help people move into being in a trance of empowerment, that we're always in trance, but it's just whether that trance is disempowering or empowering. Because even the stuff we have in our environment is hypnotizing, it's mental programming, and that's really what hypnosis is, right?
I like to latch on to what you said. That's so important. Like it has been said over and over by many people in books and all over the world, like you are like the average of the 5 people you see the most. And that is just so true. So I like to link that to, if one of those persons is the TV, then what you actually watch on the TV becomes quite important, and very much will influence your dreams, your behaviors, your values for sure. And interesting to see how we actually spend so many hours with some movie stars, very often a lot more than with our own family. So that's a thought.
Yeah, I struggle to understand people's obsession with celebrity and reality TV, and to the point where they are far more interested in what's going on in celebrities' supposed private lives, or at least what you are led to believe is their private life, than they are in what's going on in their own lives. I think there are a number of maybe more obvious psychological reasons for that, and some of that is to do with personal responsibility, or not actually wanting to deal with what's going on in your own life and reality. So it is really generally in life I feel we make the choice between entertaining ourselves or educating ourselves, and I think that is purely it is for people who enjoy that, it is just diversion. That there's no nutrition there. There's no
exactly there. It's a tough choice if you like to focus on consume or create, and lots and lots of the people who are the new working title influencers, they very much are aware, consciously or subconsciously, that they need to put out stuff every single day. So ideally people get their dose of this person every single day. So it means they're almost like an addiction, that you should tune in to see what this person is up to, whether that is for educational reasons or entertainment or whatever it is. It is very much a small obsession, and that mentor or that celebrity or whoever it might be becomes very much part of your life and really influence your thinking to a high degree.
Yeah, for sure. When I hear people introduce themselves as influencer, I really can't stop my eyes rolling back in my head, and I hear a different word as well in my head, which I'm not going to repeat on the podcast. But yeah, people are buying into this. I mean, there's a podcast that I'm obsessed by at the moment, by a guy called Mike Winnett. You checked him out? He's like doing all these sort of entrepreneurs and the formulas that they use to get people to buy, and the lack of ethics and all of this. Amazing stuff. I really am a big admirer of his podcast. But I don't think he's really been trained in things like NLP or influence and stuff. But but he does it really well, just naturally.
Yeah, he's deconstructed it really well. Actually, we had him on our podcast, Invest in You, very recently, and we saw a different side of him. He actually talked about not only getting the mick out of other people, but actually himself a bit. What I like about him and other people like that who are taking someone of the big names out there and deconstructing what are they actually doing. So I know quite a few who have been working with, are you familiar with Grant Cardone?
Yes, yeah. I've been working in the personal development industry for about 15 years. So I know most of these guys.
Yeah. So I have been sharing stage with him before-ish. So I was as his warm-up act, and he's been on our podcast as well. There has been a few people in America who's also in a similar way, Mr. Winnett, have deconstructed what they actually are doing and up to, and digging deeper. And unfortunately, if you dig really, really deep in most people's lives, you will find things which you wouldn't expect. And also, the reasons why people do things can also be very different. So I am personally at the stage where if you think one like the Maslow's hierarchy, I got many of the basic steps very much sorted. So I don't need to work to survive because I have got assets working in the background. However, I like to grow more and better. So the reason why people teach is often very different. So one reason right now for me to help other people is I genuinely like to help other people. But of course, my time is finite. I don't want to waste my time by teaching people who will not take action, because I'm very much around action. So having said all of that, what was my key idea there? Really, if you would like to be influenced by someone, try to understand the influencer. What is their purpose of actually influencing you? Is it just to get your money? Is there another reason? Is there a genuine reason to help? And have they been where you want to go? That's not always necessary in terms of coaching, because that's a particular skill that can unlock things also in spaces that you don't even know and understand. So yeah, have they been where you want to be?
It's interesting. I just had having a flash of a thought of one other thing. When I was at university, I studied English amongst other things, and so I think I speak it quite well now. But one of the things that I did for my final year was a project about the film Blade Runner, and it meant watching the different versions of it and really pulling it apart. And to be honest with you, it was really hard to enjoy watching a film when you're watching it to analyze it. Yes. and to pull it apart. The whole enjoyment factor disappears, and you're really just looking for what's right, what's wrong, what that means, what that doesn't mean. And for a while, I think the next film I watched after that was Pulp Fiction, and I was just immediately already in the mental habit of I was deconstructing it from the start. And I just could not enjoy that film. I don't know. I mean, I look back and I've watched it since, and it's like, okay, it's actually kind of a fun film. But actually have to consciously switch that off to watch a film, because my natural tendency now is to look, why is that happening? Why is that person doing that? Why are we seeing that? What are they going to do? And that you can, in most cases, predict what's coming up next in a film, and it kills it, absolutely kills it.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
But life is a bit like that as well. No, you're not as predictable as a formulaic film, but when you take that step back and think, what is actually going on here? What's this person's intention? What kind of energy am I getting from them? And what's their body language like? That you can get a pretty good idea about where things are going to go, what kind of challenges you're going to have in a particular situation.
Yeah, and that comes back to, again, the open your senses, and you will pretty much start to see where people will end up in terms of life trajectory as well. And you know, because we all got phases in life. Sorry, people like to get hold of me here. Just throw that away. Goodbye. Far away now. So for people listening to this, even if you got the phone on mute or silent, it can still distract you. So now I threw it far away.
So there's another form of hypnosis.
It is exactly. Yeah, it's all around getting your attention. So you mentioned that you studied lots of things around marketing. Marketing is really good with getting your attention, and it's all around the theme of your whole podcast as well, influencing and getting you on the hook. Indeed.
I'd like to move into talking a bit more about your work in presentation and speaking.
Yep.
Can you tell us a bit more about what you talk about, and maybe even go into some of your vision, mission, purpose for doing that?
Yep. Right. So talk about what I'm talking about. So one thing I'm teaching still are things around the sales negotiation space. So I was recently working with a very large hotel group in China and Australia. I still work with that. It used to be my full-time day job to do consulting in the sales marketing space. It was very close to what you talk about also on this podcast. It used to be my day job. All of these great thoughts brings me to sidetracks all the time. It's frustrating.
It's okay. The digressions are really interesting.
I'm a very lucky space because I can talk about things that I'm passionate about. So that is one thing I'm passionate about, helping other people get that right. Because since I've been working there, helping people, I've seen so many bad ways, bad sales, bad marketing to help them to get that right. Same with negotiation, people that only think about themselves and try to get that slightly better. That is something I find important. So I talk about those things. I also teach around how to invest in real estate, different tactics around that. So from high level strategies to very much how to get started. I'm still doing that today. I also help people to find money. Yes, you heard right. I teach people how to literally find money, how to become more investable, how to raise money. And this is super applicable to entrepreneurs, startups, very large companies. And of course, it's the transition into real estate is quite obvious. So those are the key things where I spend time talking, paid, unpaid, different ways, different countries, different languages, usually English. So yeah, that's what I like to talk about. And why do I do that? I still like to get some money here and there. I think that's interesting and the inspiration because people around me like to have money from me. So that means I can then give it away again.
Yeah, but it's good.
Including my family. So yes, that's one reason. Another reason is, of course, the passion to help others. I have been working with that so many times, for example, with the military. Often when we did real operations, it was around people in emergencies, helping people in war situations, helping people post-war, working with the United Nations, working with the UNICEF, World Food Program, helping people to get real aid, food on the ground in reality. And I really like to help others. But like I said, I need to now be more strategic around how I am doing that. Before it was maybe to be on the ground helping actually a very, very large part of Congo to actually get food by managing all the money in that project. That was a great example of where your skills are leveraged so that many, many hundreds can work, and you are a very important cog in that machinery. Same thing like the podcasting is just around giving money as well. It's not to monetize. So with that, invest in you and invest in skills, two different ones. I try to share content people can actually act on. So that's a great example of talking. Another way of talking is actually try to get your words down. Another way to help and influence many people is actually to get that book out of your head. So that's another way how you can actually leverage your time, and all of a sudden you can now spend 5, 6, 7, 8 hours with someone without even being present. And that's fascinating as well. So that's another way how we can talk to others.
It's a nice frame on it. I like that.
Yeah, and one more thing. So the companies I have, like the vision behind it is to help with quality education. Number 4 of United Nations Sustainability Goals. So my course is to help others. And one way to do that is also to help my children. Of course, every parent would like to help their children, but I'm teaching my kids to teach others around entrepreneurship. What does that mean? Ultimately, they become small ambassadors, and they applying what I teach to them means that they learn it, but they learn it deeper because they also teach and present and talk about. So in March, we'll have a training called How to Make Money as a Teenager, which is exactly what it says on the tin. Many people and parents would love to help the kids to make money, but they have no clue how to chunk it down and make it understandable. So yeah, I help people pretty much all day long.
Man, I would have loved to have gone to that workshop when I was a teenager.
Same, completely.
This is one of the biggest things I hear from people, especially when now I've been in the NLP training arena before now, as not just learning it, but I was teaching and training for a while. And one of the things I hear from people is, I wish I'd learned this when I was a kid. I wish I'd learned this sooner, especially when older people coming into these trainings. You think, so much of life that this could have made a big difference. But well, just be glad you have it now. Because most people will go through their lives without knowing any of this and will live and die completely clueless as to any of this information at all. But now we also see a generation of kids who are being taught these skills because they're so much more commonly known now. Still not by enough people, but they're enough commonly known that there are a lot more children growing up empowered and people actually looking more to giving their children an entrepreneurial edge, not just thinking that, regardless of what you think of the education system, it doesn't set people up for anything other than going into a job, really.
Yeah.
So if we want entrepreneurs, when we want businesses, it's kind of coming from the entrepreneurial community and often entrepreneurial parents teaching their kids.
Yeah.
So it's great to hear that you're doing something that is really for other people's kids, but where you can impart wisdom and knowledge to empower them for their lives.
Yeah. No, that's so true what you say there. Thank you. Yeah.
Wonderful. You have written some books, and one of them, I think one of them that I saw about was "Trust is the New Currency" is the title of one of your books.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you tell us what you mean by that?
It's actually pointing out that trust is more important than ever. And we are very much trading in trust as we're trading with money as well. So it means that the trust becomes almost like a currency. Last but not least, if you have trust, you can very quickly turn that into currency as well. So you can actually use that to get business faster. You can build your right team because you got people you can trust. You can use that to attract investments and to grow your business and projects further as well. So it's all linked.
Yeah. With that, you see on the world stage that perhaps trust in the political arena is not really existing. But where it seems to get used the most is people creating mistrust around their opponents rather than trust in themselves.
Yes.
And do you see any of that in the business world as well?
I see a lot of discredit and so on. Another way linking your former questions linked to like the whole intelligence thing, something we have not touched upon at all is linked to discredit things and is business intelligence. And that's something which is extremely rarely spoken about, but it's very real. People can enter computer systems, people can enter other people's information storage so much easier than they think, and people can actually use the military intelligence skills in a business context to get access, sometimes to come back to the question originally, sometimes using that information to discredit anyone.
Right, and anyone who might actually be a danger to the status quo can pretty much be wiped out by media as well, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the media, I see, particularly in the UK, I see a lot of the media as a tool of not just government, but really of powerful institutions to be able to hold on to their power by really being able to poison the chalice of people who might actually be very wonderful and ethical people, but they get so discredited that people are like, no, I couldn't believe in them. I couldn't follow them. Or look what they've done. Look at these things, throw enough dirt and they're done.
Yeah, and with one thing that you learn very often is working with intelligence is the source of information and quality of that source. In today's social media society, that means that the source critique is completely absent. Something can completely blow up, which might be just a lie, and it's shared even more so when it's a lie, when it's a big controversial topic because people think it's so outrageous, so they share it. Whether it's true or not, who knows? Before that was kind of more illegal and more immoral to share lies about people, but today I see that more than ever on social media in particular, where people can just start anything and they can influence a country, can influence population by applying the influencing and marketing skills, like most likely has happened. I would not be surprised at all that Russia has, of course, taken chances to influence some of the elections in Sweden, in the US, probably in the UK, for whatever reasons.
I think that we're not going to find out in the UK because they don't want to release the report. So. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg has said that they're not going to stop. They're not going to pull political ads that lie. And well, that to me, I think to most people, that seems a bit insane. It's like if people are persuading and influencing with lies, there is an ethical responsibility to do something about that, as much as there is to stop all the fake news stuff. So it is interesting, and I do find it fascinating that the things have been set up in a way generally now where people don't know what's true anymore, and there is a pushback against that. It's like because people do need to feel that they know what's true and what they can depend upon. Do you think we can ever really get back to that now, given the world that we live in?
I think on a personal level, and if that's really your focus, you can actually build trust. It's hard to repair completely broken trust. That's why I've not focused on explaining how to fix your broken trust and talk about all the bad things around trust. I focus on talk about how to actually create, maintain, and keep it. Once you've broken trust in a relationship with your customers, anything is really hard to get that back, because that will always be there, a reminder in the back of one's head. That's, for example, one reason why people are unfaithful or cheating, which is more common than people would agree.
I guess I'm talking about like the relationship with reality, which maybe is a bit deep for
coming back to trust, it's hard to build, it's very fast to destroy.
In your own presentations, how would you go about working trust and rapport into a presentation?
I would try to have some kind of decent ideas anchoring why it's even worthwhile to listen to me, by sharing that with, for example, with the host, so they can be part of the original information to even attract people in the first place, to give some credibility to myself. I hate and like people who are talking people up too much. I really like, because you feel really good about having a really good presentation about who you are, and people who do that professionally without overdoing it. I think that's fantastic, because that means that you start with a glowing aura. You feel really good about yourself, and the audience will also feel that, okay, we should probably pay some attention. I really like that. What I don't like about that is when it's done in a not genuine way. Because that means that even before the speaker has started to speak, it feels a bit off. I
can remember listening to a speaker and who this is a while back, but
Yes.
he's clearly done some NLP training. And one of the things he kept saying over again is that if you're like me, and then you know that, and then it come up again, but like me, and so you kept hearing like me.
Okay, now
Like,
okay,
like
it took me twice to spot that.
Yeah, and after multiple repetitions, it became very obvious that you kept hearing like me. Like, well, he overdid it. In my opinion, he overdid it.
Yes.
But then again, sometimes it's hard to know, like when you know this stuff, when you're trained in it, you will pick up on that. When you're not, you may not.
So true.
I really don't know. I know when I was initially training in rapport skills and NLP, one of the things they teach you, the basics are like matching and mirroring, right? You know, the physical similar positions, and either do exactly sit how they're sitting in some way, or mirror it. And one I was teaching, you can't go too far with that. And one of the things I started to notice afterwards, because most people don't know you're doing it, I would still be, you know, if you start to get a strange look if you're doing that, then people probably are picking up on it. But you do sometimes get these conversations with people where you may find yourself talking a bit like them, or you may even actually know what they're going to say next, because the rapport can get that sort of deep. So when it happens naturally, you wouldn't even think about those things. But
true.
When it doesn't happen naturally, and when it's being forced, there are people who will pick up on it. It's just hard to say at what point people who aren't knowledgeable or trained in this might start to think, what's going on here?
Yeah, exactly. And if you are good at this, then it means it will be part of who you are in a natural way. I mean, I used to teach something, I call it becoming a chameleon. And you can just imagine what that means. That's everything from like the mirror matching to customizing the message, to be more like them, more like all of those things together. I'd like to share a crazy story of where mirror matching went completely bonkers and just wrong. It was if I give you two countries, I won't say which of the two it was. It was either in Pakistan or India where this happened. I was working both with similar things. So it was me and a colleague. We were military observers, which meant, think about football, the game. You are like the referee. You're there very much in the middle of it. You're not supposed to interfere or do anything, but you should be very aware of what's going on both sides. So yeah, like a football referee between India and Pakistan on the border in Kashmir. That was basically my job. And there we had a meeting. So talk about mirror and matching. And if we would have mirrored the behavior of the person across the table, in this case, a very senior ranking military officer, and he was very uncomfortable with sharing the information that we requested. We can't demand it because we were United Nations. So we were requesting information that he clearly didn't want to say. You can see that with his whole body language. So much so that he was like, leaning to the side more and more, and all of a sudden he just fell down off his chair. From sitting on a normal chair, he fell down to the floor. So if you would have been trying to mirror matching too closely there, you also would have fallen over. That would be really even more awkward. So yeah.
But then sometimes those things happen. Somebody trips up, and if you're in rapport with them, you might have a bit of a trip yourself. Those things can happen in deep rapport. But yeah, certainly if you're trying to do that, it's probably not such a good idea. Yeah, I appreciate the story. From a presenter point of view, I just wanted to ask you, what do you think is most important for you in giving a talk, giving a presentation?
Just like anything, what's in it for them? So I used to have a great guy, one of the founders behind the organization called B1G1. Check it out if you want. Buy one, give one. Really great course. So his name is Paul Dunn. He is a fantastic presenter and speaker. He always used to say, before going on stage, he always said, for them. And that was very much his getting into the frame of, I'm doing this presentation for them. But later in life, he matured. I'm not sure where he picked up the idea from, but he changed that to for us, for us, for us. So he's very much now, I'm not only doing this for them, I'm not only here for them, but I'm here for everyone's sake, including myself. So customize the message to them. Don't forget yourself in the picture. I'm not saying that from like you present to sell. I'm saying that from a deeper level, not the transactional level. Like think what's in it for them and for you, hence for us. Same with doing that brings you closer to the audience. If it's for them, that means you're a step ahead, a step behind, or you see yourself higher than the audience, and trying to put yourself on the pedestal and trying to put yourself further distance from the audience is not the right way to do. So the closer you can get to the audience, work the room by actually having eye contact with people in different parts of the room, actually physically use the room. And this can be used also when you got huge audience as well. You can still move around the room to engage and show that you are not only the person up there on stage, you're actually amongst all of us together. Yeah. So that's a thought.
So sometimes when I've done presentation trainings in the past, especially my early days of learning how to speak, and I paid for a lot of training as well as doing things like Toastmasters, which I still do, that people would describe the stage as being the expert zone, and that there's a barrier between the audience and the stage, where you step up and suddenly at the front, just by being the person standing at the front, you are in the expert zone because you're daring to be out there talking about it. So I like this idea of bringing the expert zone into the audience as well. It's like, no, you are a part of this. You're still kind of up there as the person speaking, but you're not separating yourself from that. That's a really, for me, that's a really nice idea, and something that I'm thinking how I can bring that into my own presentations.
And just sharing this with you is just a great reminder. And I'm not perfect by any means at all, but just saying this is just reminding me I should do even more of it, because when you do it, it's even better and engaging for the audience.
Well, the goal is never to be perfect, right? It's just to get out and
always
do it.
learning.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, fantastic. Who are the people who you trust?
I trust my wife. Sometimes more than I trust myself, because she's got better judgment than me. I'm more running into risk, and she's taking it more easy. So that's one person I trust. Great question.
How about speakers or people in the professional world?
Great question. I would say, I'm not saying this to be evil. When you're part of the speaking community, which I very much am, then you know people even better. And many people I used to put on a pedestal in the early days, I don't, for whatever reasons, anymore. So either like on level, or that you see that actually this person is not doing this for the same reason as me, which is like to help others. Yes, maybe only doing it for money or other things. And I not really despise that, because there's a reason for that, of course, as well. I rather not name drop, because I got many people I like, and I take parts of what I do, but I wouldn't say that I fully trust them with my kids, so to speak.
So maybe not that kind of level of trust, but maybe a level of trust it's just, you would buy from them, or
I would happily buy from them and everything else. It's just my dad taught me something when I was young, which was not the best thing to teach teenagers. Like you can never trust anyone. That was like his angle on having him and my mom separating. I do it the other way around. I trust people until they prove that I can't trust them. So I start from the level of I can trust you, but you can quite quickly be moved away from that if you don't do that. So
I think I was brought up that way around, that you trust people until they show you you can't trust them, which has mostly served me well. Is obviously I think we all get burnt from time to time, right? But for the most part,
you get very, very lonely if you decide to not trust anyone.
Yeah, exactly. But it also, not just in terms of connection, but even professionally as well. You're gonna be either micromanaging the people you're working with, or just treating people like they're not really people. You have to really be able to develop some level of trust there. But that's fascinating, and I want to be respectful of your time, so I want to try and draw things to a close interview. But I feel like I could. It's been fascinating, and I could talk to you for hours. One of the things I would like to know is there a question that you like to be asked, or would have liked that I asked today?
That's a great question. I've used variations of it myself. I would ask, what's your best advice in terms of becoming a better whatever, fill in the blank? That's the question I like to have.
What would you answer?
I would answer something along the lines like, if you like to become really, really good at something, find the best person you can in that space and learn from them, or do it with them.
Great. Get yourself a mentor.
Something I hope I learned early in my days, but it's useful.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, my own learning has always gone much faster when it's been learning with people and being live and being able to interact and spend time with them as well. So I think that's really good and sound advice. Please tell us. I know I'm going to be wanting to check out your podcast. I'm sure audience members will as well. Please tell us how we can do that and how people can find out more about you.
Sure. So in terms of podcast, wherever you find your podcast, including this one, you can find either Invest in You there, which is more holistically around self-development. We have people who talk about presentation skills there. We talk about health, we talk about investments, and so on and so forth. We also have another one which is more niche, which is called Investing Skills. So if you're in that space, that can also be helpful. So those are two podcasts which are out there for you.
Great. And if people want to read one of your books, which book would you books would you recommend?
The one which came out last year is called Trust is the New Currency. I'll have two books coming out this year. If you're a parent, follow me on any social media, and you will see probably towards March or so when the How to Make Money as a Teenager is out there for your teenagers.
Great. I would just from what we talked about there, I would definitely be recommending, if you've got teenagers, get them along to that course because it's going to set them up for life. Well, fantastic. You've been a really wonderful guest, and honestly, I don't know, maybe you'd be willing to come back again another time and have a sequel. But it's been really fascinating to talk to you, and you've shared a lot of really great information and given a lot of good value today. And there's more to get from your books and your podcasts, and I'll be going and visiting them myself. Fredrik, thank you so much.
Perfect. And I appreciate you sharing with the world and bringing people like myself to your audience. Thanks, John.
Thank you. This has been the Loki podcast from Present Influence. If you have learned anything today in this podcast, please be sure to put it into action and use what you learn. Also, if you enjoyed the podcast, please feel free to recommend us and make sure you like and subscribe so that you don't miss future episodes. It's been our pleasure having you watch or listen in today, and we look forward to you joining us again for the next Loki podcast.